Today I am joined by the director of the upcoming Quiver Distribution film Paradise Cove, Martin Guigui. Did I pronounce that correctly? I forgot to
Well,
ask you
I've heard
before.
that version, but the pronunciation is Gigi. It's kind of like,
Gigi, okay.
yeah, it's kind of like the like um, two gis, two karate gis, Gigi.
That makes sense. And again, I apologize. I should have asked you that first.
No, it's no
Um,
big deal. I've heard all versions of it. It's a challenging. I call it the funniest name in show business.
oh, well, can you tell us a little bit about the film?
Love to. I was approached by a friend of mine, Nick Stiletti, who was a co-producer on the project, and I've known him for years. And he said, "Hey, I have a screenplay that you should read." And I hear that at least once a week or once a month, in this town. And he said, "No, no, no, you got to check this out." And it's called Paradise Cove. And so I was attracted to the title right away, and I looked at the script and got engaged by I sort of gravitate towards self-contained, character-driven stories. Um, Most of my features have been, you know, self-contained stories, and I just identified with a few things. One was the self-containment. Secondly, uh, the the fire in story, having to do with Malibu at a time where we were experiencing that here in California. So it felt I had a relevance to, at least to me, and then I loved the character of Bree, which was this different kind of throwback to the 80s, the kind of psychological thriller kind of moments, fatal attraction type moment. And so I met Sherry Klein, the writer, and she and I hit it off right away. And she was very open to creative license and creative collaboration, which is very rare from a writer. And I, being a writer, I understand, you kind of want to hold on to your baby. But she
Right.
was open to taking it to another level, which we did. And then it happened organically. We slowly started a casting process, and we found Mena Suvari, which was awesome. I mean, she's got just so much heart and very real person, and she encompassed this role beautifully. And interestingly enough, Mena is now pregnant, which I don't want
Oh,
to give it away, but for those who haven't seen the story, that plays into the triangular emotional romance and insanity that takes place in the story. And then Todd Grinnell came on board, who had just gotten off One Day at a Time and was looking for a feature, and just a pleasure to work with. Consummate professional and very creative, great guy. Um, so we were very fortunate. And then Kristin, of course, Bauer, who came in, and she really embodied the role from the get-go of Bree. She turned Bree into her, and her into Bree. And we were really fortunate to have such a great cast. As a filmmaker, I believe that uh, the actors tell the story, and there's certainly cinematography involved and lighting and all kinds of other things, but really the actors tell the story. We have to be able to identify with who is portraying these roles emotionally for us to get invested emotionally as an audience. So I try to keep that objectivity as best as possible. And so, I had 99.9% of everything covered with that cast.
you're definitely right. I want to talk a little bit about what you mentioned, the emotions of the film, because there's some movies that'll make you laugh, other movies that'll make you cry, others that'll scare you. This one frustrated the heck out of me, and it was just anxiety the whole time. On one end, we have Bree, who just gave me all kinds of anxiety, and then frustration with Knox and Tracy. And you talk about the emotions that we're going to be able to convey in Paradise Cove.
Well, we definitely felt that anxiety on the set, just so that we were
Really?
shooting, yeah, because we were shooting in that contained environment. This is a story based on truth, and it was very close to Sherry. And, we wanted to satiate and satisfy her vision, and at the same time bring, new discovery to the characters. And there was so much, as you just described, in the multi-layered relationships between these three people. Here's an example. We very close to shooting, we knew we needed some sort of a, as you call it, uncomfortable moment in the movie, and we kept searching for it. And I don't want to ruin it for whoever hasn't seen it, but you're going to love, if you haven't seen it, you're going to love this scene. It's my favorite. One of my favorite scenes in the film is when they are caught in the shower. That's all I'll say, right? You know which one I'm talking about.
Yes.
And that kind of feeling that you get from that scene, while we were shooting the movie, that we shot that scene early on in our shoot. We did a lot of the interiors in the house first. And so that kind of carried us through the rest of the shoot. And we kept thinking, well, wow, we could do this, and we made adjustments to each scene to kind of match that uncomfortable feeling that you get. You and I chatted about this earlier, before hitting record, that, you want to, when you move into a space that you want to call home, it's got to feel right.
Right.
And you also know when something just isn't right. And that's the feeling you get from the opening of when they walk in the door. You get that sense. So the production designer and the art director were wonderful. And they created, I think, a little bit of it was realism, but a little bit over the top at times, so that it would irk you too. And it became that cross between psychological thriller with ingredients of creepy and horror tied in, just enough, right? Just enough paprika of that, and garlic salt, and lemon pepper, of all that wacky shit that really kind of makes you go throughout the movie. I think there's a tone, and this is really important in psychological thrillers. And as a filmmaker, I'm a fan of it, and I learned it from the greats like Brian De Palma and Hitchcock and so many others. That tone is very key, and you can set tone with tempo, with how people speak, when they take their time to say something, how the camera moves, how much you show and how much you don't show. Those are the keys. And we were really fortunate also to have Massimo Zeri as the cinematographer, and Brian, Bruce, who I've worked with, on many films, as the operator, who's green. So it was a great combination of the right people behind the camera and the right people in front of the camera.
You talk about Kristin Bauer van Straten's performance, because she brought this great balance of, she's supposed to be this homeless lady, but at the same time, there's just enough of that sex appeal, and like she's all there and then she's not. And just such good balance to the character that made it so enjoyable and frustrating.
She's beautiful for sure, and she exudes this great spirit, right? So we use that to our advantage, because she has this very pure spirit about her. She has a great humanity. That's the best word about her as a person. And that comes across, and it worked to our favor, because there was the other side, which was a polar opposite. And as you're watching this, you're wondering, is she a split personality that has this evil side to her? Or is there a reason for why she is behaving the way she is? When did that switch flip? And there was not a lot of direction I had to give her. I've had that experience over my career, where certain actors do their homework, but they bring a level of understanding of the character, of the story, so much so that they can almost infuse it naturally into every idiosyncratic behavior that you see in the film, in the performance. Very natural would be the best way to describe it. So when speaking about Kristin, she and I would both just talk very briefly about the blocking, where she's going to walk, where she's going to be. She would tell me her comfort zone on the set. And there was not a lot I had to do, other than make sure the camera would capture that energy that she puts onto the lens. She's one of those wonderful creative artists. So I just stayed out of her way more than anything.
Oh, you have a really, really complicated relationship between Tracy and Knox. They're dealing with a lot. It seems that he's dealing with the loss of his mom, the property, and obviously she's dealing with the fact that she wants to have a baby. How much direction did you have to give them? How did they prepare for it? Or what kind of notes did you give them?
Good question. Todd and Tracy felt the way that you just described about the relationship. It was complex. There was already some sort of a rub between them because they're trying to make a baby and they're not sure who's to blame for the fact that the baby's not being conceived. That is a foundation. And then you have, like you said, Bree, character of Bree, or Kristin's character, coming in with a sexual force and a twisted temperament, and that would fuel to the fire. And then you have the other characters, the supporting characters, the crew that's working to get this house right, the city of Malibu, which is all political in this particular case, which is the way that it really plays in Malibu. Anyway, Malibu is a very protective township. And we love, residents of Malibu and us in California, we get that. We love that about Malibu. There's only 12,000 residents in Malibu, and they're protected for the right reasons. So Paradise Cove already has that kind of built into it. Mena was very open to trying different things to kind of crack the code and find the truth in her character. What I loved about this was that, again, this is a character that Mena really identified with. We did a lot of chatting. We did a lot of analyzing, trying different things. She would get it without realizing it in those first couple of takes. And if she asked for a third take, I would give it to her. On an independent film, usually you got to move pretty quickly. And I like one or two takes because it's very, very fresh. And there's not a lot of intellectualizing or overthinking going on when you get it in those first two takes. If you can get the technical part right with the cameras and the sound and the performance is there, that's the kind of energy you want on any independent film, moving, and slowing down only when you really have to go again to get that emotional transition or beat that you need. Todd was similar. He liked to really talk about this character and understand it because we got to learn about them as we shot, and we did shoot as close as possible to chronological order in the story, which helped a lot in us cracking the code for the Tracy and Knox characters. I will say what was very helpful was having Sherry Klein on set as a writer-producer. Excuse me, this was her first film as a writer and as a producer. And there were a lot of challenges on an independent film on a tight budget with this type of story and special effects and things of that nature. She was very helpful in terms of being able to give me and the actors a quick answer, because the writer knows the story better than anybody. And a director, and I'll say this, most directors, and I think this is true, there are exceptions, but we are very inclined to go with the moment and be open to all possibilities. If something comes that we get excited about, we'll go with that. Whereas a writer may say, hey, don't forget, there's going to be a domino effect here, because 3 scenes later, this happens. And typically your script supervisor will chime in on that as well. So Sherry was very helpful to answer your question with working out the Knox and Tracy roles, because the Bree character, we know who she is. And once we figure her out, there's an entertainment factor to it, which is awesome.
It's a lot to say about the pacing of your film, because of the fact you guys laid the foundation right on what they're going through. It made it really easy to accept some of the decision making they make that leads them down that path, like skipping on permits and just really trying to shoo her away the easy way. And it made for an overall complete story. because sometimes you have characters that they do things, but you don't have a reason for it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Spot on. You're a story guy, and there was authenticity because of that, for sure, 100%. And Eric Potter, the editor of the picture, and I've worked on countless films with him. He's a master and at pacing, and he's got just a really good sense of, in the editing world, very similarly to how a score should go unnoticed. That's when you know it's a good score. Same thing with the editing. If you don't sense the cutting, that means that the pacing is spot on. So I give kudos to Eric for that.
You mentioned a little bit earlier about some of the truth in the story for the writer. Is there something based on her life that this is based off of?
Yeah, from what I understand, this is something that happened. The home that you see in the film is the home that we shot. What we shot in is her home.
Really? Okay.
And the events that take place underneath the house were based on truth. So there, in that area, which is right on the beach in Paradise Cove, there have been quote unquote homeless folks, and especially now with the homeless situation being so out of control in California, there have been people who sort of show up and they find a nice little place where they are safe from the elements, and they crash, and she's had to say get out, or have to call the authorities. But then there was also not far away a house where, unbeknownst to the folks who bought it, there was somebody living underneath, and it was an ex-star. And
Oh, wow.
so it's based on truth, and she meshed those stories and created this everything else, right? Like that was what really happened in real life, was a catalyst for her to use her imagination.
That's very interesting. Was the house all torn up that way because it was being renovated, or is it for the film?
So what we did is, uh, for production fans out there, I think you'll get a kick out of this. So we shot at her house in Malibu to capture the authenticity, because you can't cheat, the Pacific Ocean, and the actual house itself has a unique look to it, right? So we shot at her house,
Mhm.
and then we built an exact replica of the everything from the stairs to the underneath of the home, and the exterior of it is all replica. And then the interior of the home was not, we shot some stuff in her house and some stuff in the replica, or also on a separate practical location that was the interior, looked like her house, right? So we caught some stuff. The bedroom was in a different location. But, because the production design was, I'm telling you that the production design was so, to her, she even said it to me, oh my God, when we walked onto the set at Thunder Studios, which is in Long Beach, California, she walked onto the set and she said, this is insane, because it wasn't just a replica as a model, it was to scale, the same size, right? Which
Wow.
blew her mind, right? And then the challenge after that was to match it in post-production, to make sure that the VFX were augmented so that it would feel like the same home.
That's amazing. That's a great fact. So my last question for you is going to be, what do you hope audiences take away from Paradise Cove?
True love prevails. I think that's a good one. And I think also that, there's crazy, there's Malibu crazy, and then there's
Then
Bree.
there's Bree.
And there are Brees out there, not just in Malibu.
Definitely. Another thing I would like to add is get your permits. That we don't have these kind of problems.
That's great.
Yeah, it's. Oh, I'm just saying it was a lot of fun. Like I said, it conveyed negative emotions in a way that this film should have. So Martin, congratulations on the film.
Oh, thank you, man. And thanks. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Thanks for taking the time to watch it and to chat about it. Great, insightful questions.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So Paradise Cove can be seen on demand February 12th. Martin, again, thank you so much for your time, and we hope to see you on the next one.
My pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Take care.